Well, everyone, I want to welcome you to today's live stream. My name is Cyrus Jansen. We have a very interesting show for you today because new evidence has come out that really is important, that we really need to look at because we are talking about the Ukraine war that, of course, is now in year 3 of its most recent escalation. We're talking about the Nord Stream pipeline. We are talking about the future of Europe and really the world as we're looking at multiple conflicts around the globe. And of course, all of this is with 80 days to the US election. And so, first of all, I want to welcome everybody to today's live stream. It's been a while since we've live streamed, and the last place that you saw me is in Guangzhou, China. And I spent some time with a close friend there named Alex from Reporterify Media. Alex is very kind. He's going to join us here in the studio today. Alex, how are you doing, bud?
Doing great. Thank you, everyone, for having me on the program. Wow, this feels different being on the other side here. But I like this. I'm kind of relaxed tonight.
Absolutely.
But I got a lot to say.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Alex, I want to thanks for for coming in today because I'm just going to jump right into the content here. I think this is really important that we want to get going. And there is a new report, and this is quite fascinating because we're looking at it from multiple Western media outlets here, looking at it from the Wall Street Journal. The Guardian is now reporting it that Ukrainian sabotagers are now being blamed by the U.S. government for blowing up the Nord Stream pipelines. Of course, everybody that knows this, these is the pipelines that are supplying gas. I'm going to bring this on screen so everybody can get a visual of this. So obviously, very important gas lines for Europe, obviously coming from the very western part of Russia, going through this Baltic Sea, going right into Germany. And I think what's so important about this, Alex, as you know very well, I mean, Germany is the lifeline of the European economy. It is the powerhouse. And Germany has really built their entire economy based on the fact that they can get and access this cheap Russian gas. What we've seen in the aftermath of this is that obviously with the sanctions on Russia, the energy in Germany has skyrocketed in the years after. It has severely affected the manufacturing industry in Germany. Alex, you'll know this, of course, for example, the auto industry in Germany, so much of that was dependent on getting this cheap Russian gas. And now we're looking at, this very interesting report here. This is kind of shows you again, like what happened. They're saying that here's where everything happened, where they're basically saying there was this small yacht that left. You can see that the materials were delivered and number one there. You've got the yacht that leaves on September 6th, and it's seen throughout here. And Alex, I want to just kind of jump right in and get your opinion on this. What do you think of these new reports? I mean, this is something that you've covered very closely. The Russia-Ukraine war. We've obviously spent time with Patrick Lancaster, who's on the ground. And what are your thoughts on this new report that's come out this week about that Ukrainian divers are now responsible for this?
Well, not surprising. There's a lot of speculation that Alinsky didn't really know about this, or he did know about it at the end and then decided to stop this. Now, they all make it sound very James Bond, very, MI5 and very CIA-ish, but let's call it for what it is. They know the pipeline was a major threat to, the Americans' natural gas business, as well as the energy cycle, and maybe Europe becoming reliant on energy coming from Russia. But I mean, at the end of the day, when you calculate this, I mean, there are so many countries around the world trading and involved in the energy sector. Why such a focus on Russia for this one pipeline? I'll tell you, there's a saying out there that the old Soviet Union, above the ground in all these countries like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, former ex-Soviet countries, all looks very European and very Western. But under the ground in all these countries have that Soviet infrastructure that is still in place. And that infrastructure is heavily connected into the European pipelines. If you see a map of the pipelines coming from Russia into Europe, they're everywhere. It's like an X-ray. I mean, it's everything's connecting everything. And this is just one example. Now there's a lot of these little feeders you see there as you going up the as you see Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Then there's that little enclave there of Kaliningrad, a little small part of Russia as well. Connecting these countries together the other way around is actually through Ukraine. So, well, you cut off Ukraine, there goes a very big distribution line for Russian oil and gas and natural gas. And then you try to get that product into Europe. Well, everyone thought the Nord Stream 1 and the Nord Stream 2, they were going to supply this. At the end of the day, whether it's the Americans involved, the Polish, whether the Ukrainians involved, at the end of the day here, this thing was going to be destructed and blown up regardless. And as we heard Joe Biden on the microphone years ago, I think he knew very well when they asked him that question, how are you going to stop it? And he says, well, we're going to. And they did.
Right.
So here we are. Fast forward.
Yeah, no, very good insights, Alex. And Alex, I just want to take a break real quick because one of the things that we've launched recently here is, people, longtime viewers of the channel, you'll know that Alex and I were both in China. We both had a chance to do a Chongqing walk and talk. We were both in Guangzhou as well. This is actually the background of Guangzhou for today's live stream that we've done. But we're launching a new series here on YouTube. We're going to be doing more live streams moving forward. So, Alex, thank you for joining me today. Always great to have you in the studio and share your insights. I do have a sponsor for today. We're going to give a huge thank you to Tax Network USA for sponsoring today's live stream. It wouldn't be possible to do the work we're doing without having sponsors. So we're going to have a quick ad read here, and then we're going to jump right back into the content. This is for all those Americans out there that are watching the show that need help with taxes. Are you struggling with your back taxes or unfiled returns? The IRS is escalating collections, adding 20,000 new agents and sending over 5 million collection letters to kick off 2024. Now, in these challenging times, your best defense is Tax Network USA. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. With over 14 years of experience, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in back taxes. No matter the size of your tax issue, their expertise is your advantage. They specialize in negotiating with the IRS, aiming to significantly reduce your debt. Now, Tax Network USA doesn't just negotiate, they also protect your assets from IRS seizures and manage your yearly returns for ongoing compliance. Importantly, they are licensed to help you with all state tax issues, regardless of where you live in the U.S. Clock is ticking. Don't wait as the IRS agents step up its game. Seize control of your financial future now and contact Tax Network USA for immediate relief and expert guidance. Just simply call the number there, 1-800-985-1000, or visit tnusa.com/Cyrus. And you can turn to Tax Network USA for your path to financial peace of mind. All right. So thank you guys for listening to our sponsor there. Very interesting, Alex, because as an American citizen, I'm certainly concerned with my tax because one of the things that you're seeing right now, and I think we're going to be talking about this later as well, is this very important 2024 U.S. presidential election, very closely tied into this Russia-Ukraine. That's certainly a pivotal issue here. And I think one of the things kind of related to this tax thing that's really interesting, Alex, is I think we're seeing a very big movement inside the United States. And certainly, I think we're at a breaking point, a tipping point for Ukraine right now, because with this new election coming in, there's only two options, right? You're either going to have Trump win or you're going to have Kamala Harris basically continue down the same road that Biden did. Now, we know without a shadow of a doubt that if Trump does win, he is going to go straight for a negotiated settlement. I mean, he wants to get this war ended as soon as possible. He has said that he will get that done before Inauguration Day, which would be January 20th. And he said he's going to go right to Putin. He's going to get Zelensky on board, and that's certainly going to be one of his primary things. That's going to appeal to a lot of American voters out there, Alex, because they are frustrated with our U.S. taxes going directly to fund Ukraine and kind of this endless money pit that we keep sending money to. And then, of course, I think what the flip side is we know Kamala would more continue along the lines of a Joe Biden, certainly be willing to support Ukraine with additional money, but there's no guarantee that Congress or the Senate is going to approve any additional money being sent to Ukraine. So I think we're at a very interesting point, and I saw another report that came out. I don't know if you saw this, Alex.
Mhm.
44% of Ukrainians, and a new Ukrainian poll, this is from one of the leading newspapers, 44% of Ukrainians have now indicated that they are open to the idea of a negotiated settlement with Russia. For some context, same poll, same newspaper, a year ago, that was only 22% from Ukrainians. So we're seeing, a substantial increase. I mean, we're almost getting to that 50% margin where half the country in Ukraine is saying, we're kind of seeing the letters on the wall here. We're kind of seeing that we're more than likely going to have to give up some territory here, and enough is enough. I think it's time that we call this war. Alex, what are your thoughts on that new poll and that data, and how this is affecting the U.S. election?
Well, these polls, usually they're done when someone's sitting at home, somebody calls, and you're in the comfort of your own home. If you use that poll on the gentlemen that were stupidly um, told to advance into Russian territory in the last 10 days, where are they going when they're going into Russian territory? Where are they advancing to? I see these reports on Sky News. I see them on CNN, giving this false hope again to these soldiers. I bet you if you took a poll on the front line, they would be a 99.9% negotiated settlement effective immediately, maybe by
Right.
midnight tonight. The issue here is you've got a country that has been backed by the West. The collective West has pumped in more. Apparently, we're hearing approximately another 100 billion should be set aside here, coming from the European Union and more of its partners, to push this advance forward into 2025. But you have to take a step back here, and you got to think, wait a minute. The Kursk reason, Ukraine front lines going into where? Where are they headed? Are they headed to Moscow? Are they headed to, I don't know, Yekaterinburg, Novosibirsk in Siberia?
Right.
They're going to run out of fuel. They're going to run out of artillery, and you are going to get airmailed probably another 20 to 30,000 soldiers' tags in the mail, and a bunch of blown up Western military products. And these guys have been fed these fairy tales. No one likes war. I don't like it. It's bloody. It's deadly. And it changes maps. And right now, I think, with Donald Trump going in there, I think, he's thinking, wait a minute, do I want to blow another 250 billion to try, get a win, try, doubt it? Or do I just want to put an end to this, get these guys at the negotiation table, business is business, end it and move on? And I think that's exactly what he's going to do. So we're seeing a desperate attempt here with just under 90 days before these elections come. And as you heard that, Trump said day one, it's game over. And I believe him. I totally believe this guy can do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see because, I think the biggest problem is the United States has passed over 16,000 sanctions against Russia. Russia has been able to avoid almost all of them. It's been a complete disaster. What that has actually done is just again backfired on the European economy. We've seen that. I mean, we've seen Germany's economy get crushed as a result of this. I think Germany is one of the lowest GDPs right now as far as GDP growth in the European Union. And again, when you have the powerhouse of the European economy, that built-in economy built on cheap Russian gas, sanctions are going to devastate that. And I think the big takeaway from this, Alex, for me is always something that we talk about is how connected our world is. And even you and I focus a lot on China because China is obviously even in a way more important country as far as considering world trade and how influential China is, because we've seen, Russia, a much smaller
Mhm.
country in terms of, its economic footprint around the world, but just how big that has been alone in devastating economies around the world. And I think we're reaching a tipping point. I mean, we've seen, the uproar in Europe. We've seen many Europeans getting upset about this. And I think, this is an interesting article, the timing of this, that this is coming out, basically saying that my big takeaway here, Alex, is that they say Zelensky knew about it, he authorized it, but then at the last second, pulled back. So it's kind of interesting for Western media to start reporting this because, for the longest time, we've only heard that obviously it's Russia. Russia bombed the pipeline, which in my mind, it doesn't really make sense because obviously, Russia could just turn the tap off. Right? There's no real need to do that. And to be honest, it's a very sophisticated operation. There's no way. I really doubt this report that you're telling me that 6 Ukrainians got on a little dinghy, a small boat, and were able to sail out in the middle of the sea, conduct this highly complex operation. I mean, there is no way that they've now said that there is like a female diver that's also been named, and that specifically they got a female diver to try to be more secret about it. I mean, there's just so many holes in this argument. I think we go back to the legendary Seymour Hersh, who had that groundbreaking article that squarely blames the United States government on this. I think that's the conclusion for many people here. But I want to kind of bring something up in regards to that because this is an interesting quote here. This is from Dmitry Polyansky. He is the first deputy permanent representative of Russia to the United Nations. Frankly, I don't know what kind of person one would have to be to believe that a bunch of drunken Ukrainian divers could have blown up the Nord Stream pipelines. It is a rather complex system located at a great depth in an area that is under close surveillance and is a hub of NATO activity. It's very hard to believe. It looks very much like an attempt to divert attention away from the real perpetrators of this crime. So, immediately, I think we've got some, certainly a very strong statement from the Russian government that they're not really buying this story either, that it is being used as a cover-up. Alex, you talked about the Kursk region. I've got an upcoming interview with Colonel Douglas McGregor where we specifically talked about this, and the colonel had some interesting insights. I'm going to probably drop that interview tomorrow, if not Monday. But he had said that quite interesting. That Kursk region, it's almost an attempt to show the world that Ukraine is strong and that it's fighting back. Basically, they picked a very vulnerable and a very weak part of Russia to invade, and to basically be able to say, "Hey, look at us. We are now able to invade into Russia. We are making an offensive. It's successful." And I guess from an investment standpoint, Alex, you and I are both investors, right? It's like you need to show your investors some ROI, right? It's like, hey, you guys are spending hundreds of billions of dollars on this. What are you getting in this return? Well, hey, by the way, we've been able to invade this area of Russia, and you can easily sell that story. Wow, look at Ukraine; they're fighting a great fight. But I think when you look back at all geopolitical experts, I mean, you look at the great John Mearsheimer, who's been a very outspoken critic of this war from day one. I mean, we're talking 10 years ago. He gave a keynote speech here on YouTube that had over 30 million views and basically said, if the United States continues down this path, Ukraine is going to get wrecked. That, of course, came true. We now see, again, the biggest experts, the military experts that are much more knowledgeable than on this subject than you and I, all of them are indicating this is a war of attrition. Ukraine has no chance. And, the best thing for Ukraine right now would certainly be a negotiated settlement, and realizing that, even for Ukraine, that, they've actually fought a good fight. They've been able to, withstand a lot of the pressure from Russia. I mean, it's not like Russia is trying to take over Ukraine and destroy the country and wipe it off the map. They simply want those 4 regions in the very far east that simply don't want to be part of Ukraine.
I think we kind of agree on that, and we kind of don't agree on that.
Okay. That's why it's great. That's why we have these conversations, so we can have a debate and chat about it.
Saying Russia or saying Ukraine fought a good fight, the Russians still aren't declaring this a war,
right?
And if it was a war, it'd be over tomorrow morning. War of attrition, yes. Calculating taking men out, experienced men, they're gone. They're gone for generations, and we're not going to see them return anytime soon unless they get new recruits, and that's just not going to happen.
Right.
Okay, so let's calculate this. Showing a return on investment. Sending 15 to 20,000 soldiers into Russian territory with Western arms is a suicide mission. It's only a one-way ticket. They are not coming back. They cannot retreat. It just will not happen. We've seen this time and time again where the media jumps on there, the Sky News, Professor Michael, he gets on the Sky News, starts talking look at the advancements. Advance to where? There's no advance. They're going nowhere. They're going to either be out of gas, out of artillery, and they're just going to get obliterated.
Right.
So, throw that onto the body count. This started in 2014. This is when the Ukraine government at that time fired on its own civilians. Yeah, they won't go back.
Right.
And here's the big risk here. Here's the big risk, Cyrus. Will this come to an end? I think the question should be, after this latest stunt, will there be a Ukraine? And that I'm questioning now.
Interesting.
I'm really thinking, wait a minute here. 6 months ago, I thought maybe this could wrap up. Everybody would lick their wounds, go their separate ways, rewrite the maps, and we get on with life. But no. You head into the territories of the Russian territories. You start, it's war, everybody. But now this is NATO entering Russian territory. This is a no-go zone. For most part, NATO's supplied, whether it's arms, jets. Lindsey Graham saying if you're a fire pilot, there's a job waiting for you in the Ukraine.
Right.
The issue is both sides have just kind of said we're going to battle it out. But this changed everything. Haven't you noticed how quiet all the government officials in Russia have gone?
Right.
Look at their Twitter accounts. Look at Medvedev's Twitter account. He's very active.
Right.
Quiet. You can watch I don't know if most people get their news from some of the Russian channels, but it's gone quiet too. And talking to Patrick Lancaster, he's telling me something big's coming. So get ready. We have, I think, one of the most reliable people in that region, Mr. Lancaster, and he's saying that all is quiet on the front, and that is something I don't think Ukraine has calculated into their equation here. It's going to get nasty.
Yeah, that's a good prediction, Alex. And like you said, we've interviewed Patrick Lancaster multiple times on this channel over the years, and your channel as well. Of course, last time we did a live stream, we were live in Chongqing with the two of us, Patrick and also Daniel Dumbro.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
which was amazing. That was just a couple months ago. I have an interesting quote from Oliver Stone. So Oliver Stone is an American filmmaker, and he's been a very outstanding voice as well. And he had some very interesting comments on this, and it kind of piggyback exactly what you're saying. I'm going to bring up, this is quite a long quote, but
he's a blacklisted American filmmaker.
Yeah.
Ever since he did Ukraine on Fire, they haven't allowed him to pretty much do a theatrical release since then.
Well, that is the free speech in America, isn't it? It is a tough one because you can get canceled at any time, and it's a very, very tough situation, with trying to speak out. And I think that's why, with our channels as well, Alex, we try to be very objective view. I think both you and I very much align on the fact that we're anti-war. We certainly don't want to see more wars going around the world. And it's a very tough one. This is a tough thing that, Alex, I'm gonna give you some other perspective. My neighbor here in America, she is from Malaysia. She's Chinese Malay. And, she's just very fast. She's been in America for a couple of years. So this is her first U.S. presidential election. Obviously, she does not have a vote because she is a Malaysian national. Only U.S. citizens can vote in the presidential election. But she said, Cyrus, I'm really torn because you have two choices for this U.S. election. You have the first choice is actively supporting a genocide in Israel. And the second choice is trying to destroy women's rights by, getting rid of abortion. So, for me, both of these are red lines. I cannot support a Kamala Harris bid because of the fact that they actively support a genocide, in Gaza. And I'm not a big fan of Trump either because they want to get rid of women's rights. And they were talking abortion. So, but my takeaway from that is she's just like, how is it that there's only two political parties, and how is it that you have a choice between bad and bad? And I said,
Crazy.
that is America's democracy. I mean, a lot of people will say, well, at least you get a choice to vote. At least you get a chance to vote. In China, they're not allowed to vote for their president. But, it's for, as many US elections as I've been alive for, I've always heard the same thing every 4 years. You pick the lesser of two evils. It's a choice between bad and bad. These are the two phrases that are constantly repeated by every American, every election cycle. And I tell you, not a lot of people are optimistic about this election in the United States, whoever is going to win. But I want to go back to our main point here. Let's piggyback here. Let's talk about Oliver Stone, because he has some interesting comments on Russia. He says, when you talk to American media, they don't have a sense of history. They don't recognize that we made a deal. America made a lot of deals. We made deals with Russia on NATO, on intermediate missiles, and on ballistic missiles back in the 1970s. And we broke both of those agreements, those nuclear agreements, the INF and the ABM. We broke both of those deals. Russia is out in the cold, and we said, F you. That's it. We're ripping it up. By the way, Russia has a huge nuclear arsenal. It may not be as sophisticated or precise as ours, but it certainly is heavy. What bothers me deeply is that the United States doesn't seem to understand what war is. A war could happen very easily now. What the United States has done for the last 4 years under the Biden administration is provoke Russia, poke the bear. Why? Because apparently we want to weaken Russia. This is the strategy. What strategy is that? It's basically a state of war, saying we want to weaken you. That's like trying to destroy you. We want to get rid of Putin and replace your administration with our guy, like Yeltsin used to be. I've even heard talk about dividing Russia up into 3 or 4 zones. It's crazy talk. It makes no sense because we can't do anything about it. And on top of it, we would be blown to pieces if we tried to do it. If America thinks it can get away with poking Russia and not get hurt, they're dreaming. Where does this come from? It comes from the neoconservative movement that started up here in America, which has always been anti-Soviet, anti-Russian. You know the people involved. They were the ones who got us into wars in Iraq and Libya. They're the expansionists who want a strong America that's always challenging the Russians and the Chinese. This is what they want. But you can't challenge someone who's got the goods. They have the goods and we don't. We don't even have a military that is ready to go to war, but we're certainly ready to use the Ukrainian military as cannon fodder. It's sad what's going on because the idea of a Ukrainian nation as the beacon of democracy in Europe is something we've created in our heads. It's not and never has been. It's a corrupt state. Wow. Quite a statement from Oliver Stone. Alex, give me your reaction to that.
Pretty accurate. And I think, again, people are wondering why, there's not much hope of this U.S. election. Just go to your city center. See how bombed out it is already. It's already done. I mean, if the world didn't have enough challenges over the last few years, after coming out of a pandemic, we marched right back into, a full-scale NATO proxy war using Ukraine. Unfortunately, Ukraine, they're going to potentially lose their country here. I think they will. That saying, Lindsey Graham, fight to the last Ukraine. He doesn't give a damn. As long as the military and industrial complex continues to rock and roll. Just recently, the markets were selling off about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Lockheed Martin hit a 52-week high.
Right.
Go figure on that.
Right.
So it depends where your money is. It depends if you're following the Nancy Pelosi investment guide on how to trade stocks in military hardware. The average American person is hurting, and they had enough of this stuff, and they want to get their country back in order. And I got to tell you, I take a pause here and just hope that America can get out of this mess this time, because there is a lot of damage gone on here. You've seen people suffering in America. Now, you say, well, that war is halfway around the world. Well, no, it's actually that war is taking place on your grocery bill, your electricity bill, your mortgage payment, your travel fees, your, every part of your life. If you don't think that billions of dollars going over to support that organization, I'm going to call it over there, think again. It's going to hit you in the pocketbook. And it's interesting about our sponsor tonight here on the program. I mean, the government's going to be looking for as much tax revenue it can get its fingers on, and they will go to any extent. I saw this happen just around the 2008 financial crisis,
Right.
when I was living in Monaco, where the American tax authorities went in to Switzerland and said, okay, bank secrecy, enough is enough. We're coming in.
Right.
And they went in there. They negotiated an agreement. But where I'm going with all of this is that you better hope that whoever steps into the office as the next president puts a quick stop to this, because if not, we're even seeing financial gurus. I don't know if you know this guy. He's a young guy. He lives in Vegas. His name is
Graham Stephan.
Graham Stephan.
Yeah.
He did the most unusual video today.
Okay.
This guy always usually does videos on financial stuff. I don't really follow him that much.
Right.
But he went back to his hometown in Santa Monica.
Oh, I saw that. I saw that.
He said, "What on earth has happened here? What happened?" And this is so fast. This could happen to a city near you so fast. And this war is going to be an economic war to us. I mean, it's crazy. Anyway, back over to you, Cyrus.
No, I'm glad that you brought that up, Alex, because I think one of the things that we're going to do in this new live stream series that we're launching here is, certainly over the next 80 days, we're going to always bring up the U.S. presidential election and kind of give our thoughts on this and, update, because it's going to be a very interesting run over the next 80 days. I mean, well, I think what's most fascinating for many people around the world is that the United States has one of the longest election cycles in the sense of the run up to this. Alex, you're Canadian. I used to live in Canada for many years. So, in Canada, the UK, Australia, other countries around the world, usually when you call an election, you've got 6 weeks to the vote. So it's a very short, kind of run up to the election. Obviously, in the United States, we have, it's up to 2 years, that you're campaigning, that you're moving forward. So, this is, it's a very exhausting, process for Americans, as, we are, for example, just for some context here, when you open up your mailbox here in America, every day you're getting political pamphlets in the mail. Vote for this, vote for this. The amount of spam phone calls and text messages from marketing campaigns. I mean, you just basically get hammered with this, information every day, and it's very exhausting. I think for most Americans, they're very much. I mean, we're still 3 months away. It's still a long way away from the election. So every day it's just going to be ramping up. But I think what you've hit on some really important points, and I think what's happening here is that these wars, right? We've got the United States just approved another $20 billion in military sales to Israel, another $20 billion. So you have a very difficult thing here in the United States, where I'm looking at this being on the ground here, is that you have a lot of people starting to get frustrated, because it's like we're selling all, like you said, it just seems these military industrial complex stocks, like, oh, wow, Lockheed Martin, 52-week high. What are the odds of that? Pretty high, actually, because, we've got multiple wars going around the world. And, these neocons in Washington, D.C. are, drumming up more and more, fear and really desire for more conflict. I mean, I think what's difficult is, you have one of the most irrational voices near Washington, D.C. is this Pottinger, who is just the most hawkish, Matthew Pottinger, who's the most hawkish voice towards China. I mean, he just openly wants a conflict with China. He wants to agitate China. He wants to attack China. And it's like, when we, the two wars right now is not enough. We need a third. Let's take on China as well. Let's instigate. Let's just keep poking this. We're going to be poking this bear in Russia. Well, let's poke Beijing as well, and let's try to steer the hornet's nest up. And we need a direct conflict with them, which is just such an irrational way of thinking. And, that's what's amazing, Alex. I'm here in Las Vegas, and 9 out of 10 people that come to this city are coming from the state of California. Another new neighbor, he's been in Vegas for a month, moved from the Bay Area. And he just said, Cyrus, he works for Google. He's a Google engineer. And he said it just got to the point where you cannot, San Francisco has become unlivable. It's just, it's so bad there because, I mean, you cannot, you just can't imagine how far it's descended from what it was. I mean, San Francisco used to be one of the best areas in, one of the most beautiful cities. And what's interesting, he said, is, you remember, Cyrus, when Xi Jinping came for this summit in November, and all of a sudden, within 4 days, everything was cleaned up. And now you have a very similar thing with Gavin Newsom going for re-election. And now it's like, well, we're going to make a plan now. We're going to start cleaning up these homeless encampments and everything. So everyone's like, well, you've had the ability to do this then. So you know how to do it. You have the ability to do this, but you've chosen not to. You've just let this city descend into utter chaos. And it's just, it's not, it's, America is just so interesting because, again, we go around the world preaching, democracy, the rule of law, all of these values and all of this stuff, but we don't take care of what's happening inside of this country. And I think what's tough is, critics always just go back to one point. Well, at least you get to vote in the presidential election. At least America is a democracy. But the problem is it's not serving the people. People are very frustrated. And I think that's one of the things that we talked about is, okay, great. I have a chance to vote for the president. Sure, I got to vote in November. But do I get a chance to vote? Do I get a chance to say that we can support Israel, that we have to send $20 billion of aid? Do I get to support the hundreds of billions of dollars that go to Ukraine? I don't have any say in that, right? It's these government officials, it's a facade. It's a facade. We get to have a say in very trivial things, and that's like, okay, now you have your freedom. Meanwhile, on the back end, everybody in Washington is running this for their own interests, and I think that is the system's completely broken. And what I'm seeing on the ground here, and I want people to really understand, is that most Americans are extremely frustrated. I don't think you have any Americans that are going to come out and be like, wow, our government right now is just, it's working great. Everything's going really great here. They're frustrated with the government. They're frustrated with their voices not being heard. And there is a very pessimistic look for the future.
Totally agree on that one.
Yeah.
I think here's the contrast. There is hope. And why I say that is going on 4 years living here in China. When a government gets its house in order, when a government is for the people, and when a government is looking out for the best interest in poverty alleviation, infrastructure building, making people's lives the best they possibly can. Of course, we have to understand some mistakes can be made during the way. We can understand that maybe some things are built that might not ever be used, or we can look at a country that is managed very well. 1.5 billion people wake up every day. Imagine having that responsibility, 4 or 5 times the size of the USA's population, and having to think about feeding these people, having to think about unemployment or job opportunities. Well, I have to tell you, and doing some great walk and talks with you here in my lovely city of Chongqing, this used to be a city that had challenges, a lot of challenges. Still does. But this can be a beacon to, I think, a lot of cities and even nations around the world, that when a government does care about its people, they can do remarkable things. And I have seen some very astonishing things here in China. I'm going to just, if you're okay, talk about one of these recent events I was at. The electric car, we talked about this in our walk and talk that we had a few weeks back in Chongqing here. And I think you were quite amazed by the amount of cars on the streets that were new energy vehicles.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to say to the viewers here, this isn't a Greta Thunberg mandate where it's get rid of your cars, big bad petrol cars are bad. No, it's a shift, and it's a shift in an understanding. It's a country that has said, okay, you know what? Right or wrong, we're going to invest.
Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, have they invested money. Okay. Now, some automakers may vanish, some may stay. It's competitive, very
Right.
competitive market. But the most interesting thing I heard from an executive in the new energy vehicle market, I said, tell me, how can we, why is there such pessimism in these Western countries?
Right.
And he says, Alex, you got to understand that is a country, Henry Ford. They're used to mechanics. They're used to these cars. They're used to getting in there. American muscle.
Right.
Detroit, can you imagine how exciting Detroit was when it was just rocking and rolling? Wow. Okay. We hope we get those days back. And I got a solution for it. But anyway, he said to me, the younger generation coming up here in China are consumers. And the first vehicle they're getting into is now not necessarily a petrol-powered car, because over 50% of the automobiles now sold in China are new energy vehicles. Huge market, by the way. And when people are stepping into these cars, these young guys and girls are in their cars. What are they thinking? Oh, okay. Is there massage chairs in the car? How about the lighting in the car? How about the ambiance? How about, can it play all, can it connect to my Douyin account? Can I, have reclining seats like in an Airbus A380? Yes, it's got all those things. And this is the new car buyers. So when he's saying they're a car buyer of new electronics, new gadgets, new type of technology, they're the ones that are going to be the buyers. It's not about trying to convince us old cats, get out of the American muscle and get into the new energy vehicles. Let me tell you about my solution in America.
Okay.
And I hope somebody can pass this message on to the administration. First thing I'm concerned about is if Donald Trump continues to bring back some of his old cronies that gave him bad advice. He's got a lot of those boys there. Okay. I don't know if he's learned his lesson, but some of these guys, no matter who gets in as president, I mean, if you got the Lindsey Grahams in there, the neocons, the Nikki Haley's, proceed with caution. Okay. I hope they don't have the ability to continue to convince Donald Trump. And I'm predicting that he's going to win. Okay. Just putting that out there. I'm not an American. I can't vote on it, but I'm just predicting that I've seen enough chaos here in the last 4 years. I think this guy deserves one more shot at it. But I hope when he's putting his administration together that he's not just doing it with, who he thinks can fill that position, but thinking about it. And got to remember, JD Vance is not, we talked about negative people on China. JD Vance is not a big hero of China either. He's put out some pretty negative stuff about dealing with China. I don't know what it is. Anyway, if you're going to solve the American and U.S. problem I suggest that you take a massive piece of land in Detroit. You follow the China model of a special economic zone. You use Detroit, you get those old warehouses and factories going again, and you get into a couple of sectors, whether they're making chips, similar companies like NVIDIA, whether they're making new energy vehicles, whatever the technology is. I don't even think there's a bloody TV manufacturer in the United States anymore. But you turn this region or state into a special economic zone, an SEZ, of course, have very, very low corporate tax for the next 20 or 30 years. And you turn on those imports and you say, right, we're going to employ people from North America to work in the special administration zone, but we are going to allow Chinese investment on our soil, yes, in the special economic zone. If you don't think this is happening, it's happening right outside that window right there, right now. Okay. American companies are coming here on the soil here in China. Shanghai port is the 8th largest economy in the world, the port of Shanghai. Okay. So you have to understand that, okay, if the administration wants to, instead of throwing tariffs in and trying to put sanctions on all these countries, all right, Detroit, get ready. Let's put a big piece of land up there. Let's open up these factories. Let's get Chinese investment, and let's make it a special economic zone. And look out. If you don't think this is possible, just look at Shenzhen, which was a fishing village a little over 30 years ago. And you and I talked about that. And maybe you can finish this little part off of telling maybe the viewers what exciting things are happening down in that area, and maybe explain a little bit more to them what I'm talking about.
Oh, I know.
Thanks.
I mean, I think it's really important, and Alex, one of the things we did 2 walk and talks, and I invite everybody to look at our channels and see these videos. They've been very well received. We did a walk and talk in Chongqing, also in Guangzhou, and I think, Alex, one of the interesting things is you look at the comment section on that, and a lot of interesting comments from people saying, "Wow. Look at the society in China. Look at the people when you're walking around Chongqing and Guangzhou. That what I've noticed is a lot of the people that are walking. There's the Chinese people look healthy. The Chinese people look fit. They're well dressed. They're well behaved. They're just it complements how modern and advanced this society has become and certainly progressed over years. And it's a very different view than what we're seeing here in the United States. Wow, Chongqing, 35 million people. I cannot believe how clean those streets are. We talked about extensively the EV industry, which you just referenced, and how that's transformed the entire future of China. Just last month, actually, it was the first time in China's history that there was more EV sales than the fuel sales. And now it's dominant. So basically, it just shows that EV power is here to stay. We know that. I mean, 50% of the cars on the road now are EV, and really what's an interesting happening here, Alex, is the fact that the foreign auto brands, your Buick, Audi, Mercedes, BMW, all of these companies had a tremendous run in China. And almost not overnight, but within a few years, it has done a complete 180. There was an interesting quote. There's been an interesting article written from a former GM executive who's just said, foreign auto sales in China is done. It's finished. It's gone. It's never coming back. And the interesting thing was, just for some context, back in 2007, 8, when I went to China, very first years, every Chinese national wanted a foreign car, and they would pay cash for it. They wanted that prestige of driving a Buick, driving a General Motors car, driving the Mercedes, the BMW. China was a cash cow for these companies. I mean, you look at Volkswagen and Mercedes. I mean, China was an absolute cash cow. The GM executive said, China is our never-ending money, draw. It's like we can basically, bank on a $2 billion dividend every year from China because we make so much money there. But what's shifted now is, and it's the Chinese consumers. It's very interesting. I did a video recently on Huawei and how it's been able to, have this dramatic comeback, and it's certainly been sanctioned. It's been, survived an assassination attempt from the U.S. government, really trying to limit Huawei. But one of the things behind that is just this rallying of national support in China. In China, many Chinese people are supporting Huawei because they want to buy it because it's Chinese. They want to support that company. Again, 2007, I mean, people were buying Nokia. Nokia was the phone in 2007. They had a huge presence in China. I remember being in Shanghai. They had a massive flagship Nokia store right on Nanjing Xilu, and it was amazing. I mean, we would go in there on our day off just to look at cool Nokia phones because it was the cool thing to do back in 2007. And at the time, I mean, we just thought, wow, Nokia is just at a different level. They're at a total different level. Like, who's going to be able to compete with them? Meanwhile, a few years later, iPhone came in and destroyed their market and quickly became the number one brand where everybody, you wanted to be seen with an iPhone. That was a power statement. If you had an iPhone in China, you were the cool one. And that was very much a power statement to have this American phone. And now we've seen that shift. Obviously Apple's still popular. Obviously iPhones are still popular in China. But the interesting thing is, as the rise of Huawei, Xiaomi, and, a dozen other phone brands in China, there's much more affordable options. I mean, you can get a premium Xiaomi phone for, a few $100s, and it does basically everything an iPhone does. And people say, hey, it's made in China. Let's support that. And so I think what we've seen, with China, and what I'm glad that we've shown in these vlogs, Alex, is an insight into where people, a simple walk on the street can give people a much better perspective of a society. And again, you and I are not going to be going down to Santa Monica or San Francisco. Really go up the entire West Coast, even to the city that you and I both lived in for many years and know very well, Vancouver, Canada. Vancouver is an absolute disaster now, because of these policies and the governments that are not doing anything, for the people. And so it's very hard for, the Chinese to see this. This is a recent story. I don't know if you know this. So in Richmond, Canada, which, as you know, Richmond, for context, everybody, Richmond has around 70% Chinese immigrants or Chinese population. It's one of the wealthiest cities in British Columbia, probably one of the wealthiest cities in Canada, to be honest. Richmond, British Columbia, Vancouver government just announced that they are going to be building a 160 unit center for drug addicts, and they're going to be building this directly on Cambie Street in Richmond. And there were over 1,200 Chinese, citizens, or not citizens, I mean, they're Canadian, but Chinese, ethnically Chinese people that are residing in Canada. They're living in Richmond, and they are protesting this. They're at the site. They're saying, no, it's actually right next to Cambie High School, which is where my wife went to school. And they said, no, we don't want your drug problems here. Do not relocate all this riffraff from downtown Vancouver. You go to East Hastings Street in Vancouver, absolute Armageddon down there. I mean, you've got druggies everywhere, people passed out on the street. It's a zombie apocalypse down there. It's disgusting. It's horrible. You wouldn't want to, raise kids there. You wouldn't even want to go for a walk down there by yourselves. Alex, you and I wouldn't want to go a walk as two grown men down that street at this point. But it's like, well, let's pick these people up, and we're going to put them in the center of Richmond, where all of these Chinese immigrants are, and who have built up. And that's the thing that's really tough, because Chinese immigrants, they come in and they are very respectful. They come in, they're all contributing to society. And the interesting thing with the Chinese culture is, it's very much, they teach their children, like, don't be a liability to society, right? They don't need to be a billionaire. You don't need to be some successful entrepreneur. Just learn to contribute to society. Play your role here. Just be a good person. That's very much a Chinese value. And, now you've got all of this riffraff that they're going to relocate there. And it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster, where people are like, how can we have this? You're going to take all these tax dollars. I mean, my Google executive that lives, my neighbor here, he said, it's so bad. He goes, we've got the government, their solution is for all these druggies is that if you can go in and you can test clean, we're going to give you a $25 gift card, and we're going to give you housing. We're going to give you this. And it's just, I think that's what's really tough for a lot of Chinese people to understand. It's like, wow, this is just mental. And you go down the coast, right? LA, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, I mean, disaster. Seattle, disaster. Vancouver, disaster. And it's sad to see. And I think that's going to be a very big, what we're really looking for, Alex, again, and this all ties together. Again, the title of this stream is, obviously we're talking about the Nord Stream pipeline, Ukraine. We're talking the developments of the Russia-Ukraine, war that started, over a decade ago. But what you're seeing here, and I think when we're talking about this U.S. election, I think it's very simple for whoever wants to win this. All you have to do is focus on the economy. That's the number one selling point. Because the problem is the Biden administration came out this week and just said, hey, great news, everybody. Inflation's down to 2.1%, the lowest it's been in 2-3 years. And that is so disconnected from reality. I don't know where they get those figures from, but the simple thing is, go to the grocery store, go out to a restaurant, go basically do anything you want to do. Everything has gone up tremendously. And I'm talking anywhere from 15 to 50% on prices of things. I mean, gas has doubled. Gas is, grocery stores. I mean, the expense to live in the United States is extravagant, and it's not being reflected. Inflation 2.1% is completely unrealistic. It doesn't reflect the actual changes of what's going on. So I think if you have a presidential candidate that can really get to the hardcore issues and simply just focus on job creation. I mean, your idea of building an economic center following the Chinese blueprint. Okay, this is going to be a special economic zone. We're going to develop this. We're going to team up with China. It's interesting because you have, like you said, JD Vance, not a big, supporter of China. I think you've got Waltz on the other end. A lot of people are kind of speculating, what is he? Because he spent a year teaching English, I think, in Guangzhou. I think he's been to China almost 30 times in his life. So he has a connection to China, but, let's not pretend that he is, a huge China fan. I mean, he's a big supporter of Joshua Wong and the Hong Kong riots. I think he's, very big supporter of the Dalai Lama and that. So there's definitely some stances that are going to be going against what the Chinese government and many Chinese people feel. I think it's good to have somebody with some experience, and Waltz. But I think what's interesting is if you ask Chinese people, I got into a Twitter debate on this because someone was asking, who does China prefer? And the Chinese definitely prefer Trump. And I mean, they definitely prefer Trump. And the interesting thing is you look at it from this perspective, Alex. Some people are like, well, Trump is going to pass more tariffs. Trump's going to be, even more anti-China potentially. And it's like, well, the Chinese actually are okay with that because they know that Trump has to play the game, and he has to appeal to what Americans want to hear. And, he's going to say, hey, China's the biggest threat to us. We're going to tax China. We're going to tariff them. They kind of can read where Trump's coming from. Like, we know what we're getting with Trump, right? We know that you're going to say you're going to pass these tariffs. And I've talked to many Chinese businessmen about this, and it's like, we get it. You got to play the game in America, right? Like, you got to play. You got to get elected, right? So you got to play whatever game you're going to play. Obviously, next 80 days we're going to see all these political campaigns against each other. I saw it trending on Twitter right now, like, people are questioning JD Vance's integrity. And then now, of course, they're going to go after Waltz. So, I mean, both sides are going to get hammered over the next 80 days as we're moving towards this election. It is interesting, though, to see China, I think, does prefer Trump just because he's more direct. You got the Kamala one, I think it's harder for them to read. What do they really want to do with China? Do they say one thing, really want to do the other? Do they want to spread their kind of very liberal ways? What is the policies that they're going to be going in? So it's going to be interesting to see, where we are with this election.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, all these major problems that are happening in these cities around the world, I would say, let's focus in on the United States since we're talking on the topic. These are government decisions. You have to wonder, why are all these people doing drugs? How did they get to do drugs? Are the pharmaceutical companies also responsible for these people being on the streets? Is, the Affordable Care Act doing what it's said it's going to do? Is the, having the proper type of Medicare that will cover, your prescription drugs? Are doctors cutting off patients too early because, on subscriptions, and then they're hitting the streets? This is all a major issue with government decisions.
Right.
China has a different approach on that. No, I don't see strung out people on the streets here. Okay, right. I don't do that. I don't see, I'm sure there are people that are less fortunate here that do have to, struggle trying to find a way in life. Yes, there's unemployment here. There are things that need to be fixed, and the government works on them. I mean, I work with Chinese every day. I see what are their challenges and what are their wins.
Right.
And right now, it's a nation that knows the country and the entire global economy has come out of a pandemic, and they know they got to get to work, and they got to work hard to overcome some of these challenges. When you mentioned inflation, these 2% and these 2.1s, yeah, of course they don't make any sense. I mean, these are numbers that are being calculated on top of already massively increased prices. Whether, inflation popped up 10% one quarter, 5% the next quarter, 8% the next quarter. I mean, 2 is really nothing. Right. But I think the biggest one is the mortgage, and you'll see it come out in prime fashion there. Exactly. Doesn't matter if they're lowering the rates. People are still in pain. Anyway, back to you. I think that was pretty good live today. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, very good, sir. I have one final thing that I want to share with you, because I think you'll find this very interesting, Alex. Because one of the things that I want to address some of the critics that we get in on these live streams, because a lot of times people say, okay, China building these high-speed rails, it's a facade. That's just a way for them to boost their GDP numbers, right? They're going to build all these high-speed rails, and it doesn't matter because it's extremely unprofitable, right? They're losing money, losing billions of dollars on this. The whole EV thing is overrated, right? Oh, all of these
Hmm.
EVs are exploding all over the country. China EVs are terrible quality. I mean, the reality is you don't understand how. This is the funny thing, Alex. When I came back, as you know, we were in Asia for 6 weeks this summer with the kids. First time for me to bring my 3 children back to China. We spent a month. We spent 30 days in Guangzhou. It was amazing. And I think when we came back to America, so many of our friends here were just very curious because my wife was sharing things on Instagram, sharing stories, sharing things. And it was amazing because for so many Americans, I'm always encouraged by this because we really are these international ambassadors. You and myself, and anybody that's living in China, traveling to China. You and I mentioned this, Alex. There is a plethora of new travel vloggers that are going to China and showing you what it is. Of course, the New York Times came out and wrote a hit piece on this, saying, "Hey, China's government is loving all of this propaganda." And it's funny because China's government's not involved. It's just the only thing that, well, they are involved because they've just made it easier for people to come in. And if you're a travel vlogger, of course you're going to want to go to China because it's one of the most hot topics in the world. People want to see it, but of course, as you know, it was closed off for the world for many years. But
Hmm.
there's nothing that the Chinese government need to do other than open the country up and let people come and experience it for themselves. And this is an interesting insight here. I want to show specifically about the China Rail. So, China Railway Group just reported that it reached over 330 billion yuan, an increase of 10.6% year on year, setting a new historical high. So, a batch of new lines successfully opened for operation with a total of 980 kilometers of new lines launched in the first half of this year. More high-speed rails are still being created. They've just built the Nanchang Jiujiang high-speed railway. That's generated employment for over 5,100 people, boosting local village businesses like convenience stores and restaurants. The country has planned to build 38,000 kilometers of high-speed rail by 2025, 45,000 kilometers by 2030, and the country already has 45,000 of kilometers of high-speed rail in existence. This project started back in 2004, aiming to meet the national transportation needs, revised in 2016. Basically, the big conclusion here is that all the goals that were set have been achieved ahead of schedule, and the country is moving forward with this plan, continuing to develop by 2030. So I think that is something that is amazing, Alex. I know you've made amazing videos on the infrastructure of China. You've talked about high speed rails, and I think what's amazing is the critics will say, well, China's railway is losing billions of dollars. Well, you don't build you know over 50,000 kilometers of high speed rails to transform the country and immediately see a ROI within year one. It's obviously an investment into your future. I would imagine the same thing happened in the United States when the US government said, hey, we need to build the interstate system and let's build roads all over the United States back in the 1940s and 50s. That would have obviously cost them a tremendous amount of money, right? I mean,
Still
and
costing them for repairs.
absolutely. I mean, this
What
is like,
is the Route 66? Is it a toll highway?
yeah,
Huh? Is it? Is it?
no,
Is it?
it's not, no, not Route
Okay.
66.
If
Yeah.
if Route 66 ain't a toll highway, somebody's paying for the maintenance. I don't
Oh,
think it's
yeah.
profitable. It's not
Oh,
profitable.
absolutely. So I mean that's why you have private roads, or you do have, like in Florida, for example, in Central Florida where I'm from, a lot of toll roads that pay for that. Very expensive to drive on those, and it's an interesting one. So I think when you're looking at our biggest takeaway, and again, I think this is something that we strive to on our channels. Alex is trying to show an objective view of China, and the most amazing thing, my takeaway, Alex, was how well our videos were received from just simply walking around and people observing. People just, my favorite comments were just like, wow, I just noticed the people that you were walking by. It just seems like a very functional society. It seems the people there, you saw the girls kind of going behind us waving, and people
Yeah,
very
it's fun.
friendly. I mean, it's a very different thing. And one of the things that we talked about on my live stream as well is the simple fact of my wife, going out to get a foot massage at 11 p.m. and then walking almost a mile from the foot massage place back to our hotel and calling me in excitement. Wow, I can't believe it's midnight and I'm walking home, and it's in Cyrus, it's packed. Like there's couples out here on a date night. There's girls walking home from the gym. People are out and about, and it's extremely safe. And that's something that's just interesting. I've got another neighbor. I love talking about my neighbors because we have a great group of diverse people here where I live. And he's a FedEx pilot. So FedEx based in Memphis. He said that he has to go for training. He's a FedEx pilot. He goes for training 3-4 times a year down in Memphis. He said there is an attack now against FedEx drivers in Memphis because we're now, in America, they're robbing the people. You deliver a package and people go to your porch and steal the package. Well, now the thieves have gotten one step ahead. It's, well, why are we waiting for them to be delivered? Why don't we just rob the FedEx truck directly? It got
Oh
so
my.
bad, Alex, that earlier this year they had to have police escorts driving the FedEx trucks around Memphis because the crime is so bad there. And I just want people to have some perspective here. And again, this is not me being anti-American. It's not me saying, this place is bad, but you have to call this out. I mean, that is not a functional society when you have to get a police escort to follow your courier service around your neighborhood. You tell that to Chinese people, they're going to look at you like you have two heads. What the hell are you talking about? That's what that doesn't exist in China. That's just completely irrational, and it's just not safe. And that's something that we need to have some perspective. Like you said, I love what you said, Alex. Detroit, let's get a special economic zone. Let's get that developed. Let's work with China. I mean, you and I would be very open to that. Whether that idea flies in the United States, we'll have yet to see. But Alex, I want to thank you, buddy. It's been a pleasure being on the stream with you. I'm going to leave the last words for you, my friend.
Well, once again, I just want to say thank you to Tax Network USA for sponsoring tonight's live stream. We really need support like that. This helps. There's a lot of stuff that goes into the show. And once again, it's great to have a sponsor that is going to play a very important role here, probably in tax season, I can tell you that. Anyway, I just want to let everyone know once again, it's an honor for me to share the screen with Cyrus Jansen. This is a friendship that is blossoming year over year here as we try to meet up, whether it's on North America or China. We do our best to get the news out for you guys. Pay attention here over the next few weeks. We are going to see some pretty big geopolitical stuff happen. I think the Ukraine is going to heat up even hotter. I hope the Iranians can find a diplomatic solution so that we don't get dragged into another war there. And the third, I'm going to little plug for my channel, Reportify Media. I've got a big video coming out tomorrow on China's massive investment in the new energy vehicles. Watch out for that. Nice. But that's it for me, guys, here in Chongqing, China. I'm going to pass it over to the guy that's running the show tonight, Cyrus Jansen. Thank you.
Yeah. Alex, always a pleasure to share the screen with you as well. And again, huge thank you to Tax Network USA. Guys, give them a call there. If you're an American citizen like myself and you need help with your taxes and really getting ready, I mean, you're going to see it's going to be a big play. So tnusa.com/Cyrus. I want to thank you all for being here today. We are going to be continuing our live streams. We're going to be having more live streams in the future, a better program. And, it's just something, it's a great chance to connect with the fans live. We peaked over 2,000 people in the stream today. So it was fantastic getting so many people involved. Everybody that was active in the comment section, thank you for spending time. Time is your most valuable asset. Thank you for using it and spending time with us here on YouTube today. I'm signing off, and we'll see you all in our next live stream soon. All right. Let's get our little video here.